So, similar format. Effie, do you think you could do this about 3 or 4 minutes on your project?
Sure, happy to do that. So I think with this particular STFC Food Network project, we did this with some researchers from the STFC Food Network, from then the PI for the project, Xiang, was based at University of Sheffield, although she's in University of Birmingham at the moment, and some other researchers from University of York and St. John's University in New York here. So what we were trying to do is to look at how we can provide data on understand the data from household food waste and be able to engage with suppliers, provide information for them so that they can improve the way they're sourcing food item based on what amount of food waste people are producing. But more importantly, the key thing we're also trying to do is to nudge people. The key terminology for the project was to nudge people, kind of data-driven nudging to help them reduce food waste. How we were looking, the project was designed is that we can provide the food tracker platform, which we developed from initial project we did with Daphne, to them, and they can record the food they buy on daily basis or weekly basis, depending on how they shop. They can record the food they bought and what they wasted, and based on that we can start seeing the pattern in their food waste, and that pattern will help us to know where we can nudge them to make changes. So it's more like a data analysis project, but also AI-driven nudging, which means that by understanding their pattern of food waste and what they're buying, we can start to see the pattern in terms of where they can make changes in what they're buying, what they're choosing to eat. We also had a nutritional angle to it, to where we then look at what they've planned to eat, whether that it meets their daily nutrient requirement. So there's quite a lot of data that we needed to look into. We also look at the size of the family, the size of their income, the area, so the area where they're staying, and the availability of food within that location, to be able to give them that diversity and options in terms of what they're eating. So by looking at all these data, we're able to identify that people within a certain age bracket may be, because of the age bracket, because of the size of income, because of the size of family, they are having more food waste than the other. And then we then start looking at how we can make recommendations to them on what they can do, the little steps they can take through their daily meal planning to be able to make changes. It doesn't mean they have to necessarily go on a long meal plan. If they want to do that, it's great. It doesn't, but also they can do that on the go, so they can record that on the go. It just gives them track to see where their food waste is occurring and how they can make changes. So that's what the project was about. And the aim is that building on that data, the more data we have, the more we can then link up and say Tesco, based in this area of the country, say in Europe, these are what your customers are wasting more. And so is there a way you can support or help to change the way, maybe the type of produce, or if there's anything they can do to improve their supply chain, as well as also nudging the users to think about storage, think about planning, how they can make changes to improve and reduce their food waste. So yeah, thank you very much.
I mean, I must think of some questions. I'll stop myself. Jens, please. 4 minutes on your how many projects I've lost track. I mean,
I don't even know. I mean, we can we can start with lunch. When we had lunch out here, we were sitting at the table talking about how to avoid food waste. Like, hardly a cultural thing that you don't put something on your plate that you don't eat, and hardly there are cultural things as well. Like Manoj was talking about adding water to the leftover rice and then making use of it the day after. We were talking about the best before date, where you can use food, and I used to, if I have milk, for example, I would just use the smell test. Does it smell okay? Does it look okay in my tea? Does it taste okay? Rather than look at the date. And then I had a friend who threw tea bags away that were past their best before date. Tea bags last infinitely long time. Like 1,000 years from now, you can pick up a tea bag and it'll work. Right? So yeah, there's a kind of a cultural thing, which reminds me of how we have sort of occasionally in projects tried to pick up food practices in different countries, and there may be good practices that we're not used to here, but like how we can use food. The project in Ghana, for example, that was trying to find out how they could traditionally do food in smallholder farms and things and how they could eliminate waste. There's the circular economy that we worked on, and where we can try to optimize supply and demand. Sonal was working with that as well. We had a discussion with Vahid, who was looking at the suppliers' food that would otherwise have been wasted, and the consumers, and trying to meet the demand. We did similar types of modeling in Peter Ball's food circular economy. I did a simple-ish model in an Excel spreadsheet just to make it accessible to people who are not computing experts, where the model looked like we sort of entered a steady state, but without meeting all of the demand, except in special cases. So yeah, and it strikes me that there must be, as we look at these moving stuff around from A to B to eliminate waste, whether it's the IntelliDigest derived product or circular economy or something else, when we optimize that, so Vahid was looking at eliminating to reduce the waste. You can also focus on meeting the demand. You could focus on reducing CO2. You can focus on reducing costs. And sometimes these goals are conflicting with each other. You can always reduce cost to zero by doing nothing, but then you have a lot of waste and you don't meet the demand. So somewhere there must be like a sweet spot where you can optimize under certain constraints. And it strikes me that there must be a reusable algorithm for doing this, where you can just plug stuff in and turn the crank, and out comes a result that says, here's how you move stuff around.
Okay. Well, are you going to do Brian's from over there? Or you're trained, so you do like.
There is, yeah, very quickly, because Brian has been with the STFC Food Network for quite some time, so I just feel an urge to make sure that he's represented well. So we started a project in about 2018 when STFC Food Network was in its first phase, with Brian and John Van Doore from STFC going all the way to India and walking in the food market. We call it mandis, meaning where it's mostly like a wholesale market in India, where they were actually trying to understand why there is so much of a food surplus, and why there are food which is not being sold, and why there are food that is being wasted. And they came up with a very good observation, which generally when we were at maybe A levels or GCSE, we would understand that, but we kind of forget it as we probably grow older and specialize in our own field. They looked at the different materials that were used in those market areas. It was very nice and colorful, and the temperature outside was 40-45 degrees, which also means that those materials in which the food are being stored are absorbing heat and therefore accelerating the process of the food loss being done, and that only probably a physicist could quickly mark out. And then we went ahead and we applied for a larger grant project, which was around 840,000 pounds from STFC GCRF funding pot. We did a lot of exercises with farmers in the remote communities. I mean, who would imagine Brian Shaughnessy working on Mars rovers, being a space thermal insulation scientist, a lead scientist, working in those areas, would be actually walking in remote villages in India had it not been for STFC funding. So we really pushed the boundaries there. And I think I will just cover as well what went well since I'm standing here. I think this really went well. We're bringing in the scientists from their own sort of comfort zone to the places where they would actually see the impact of their science being made. and also different logics of disciplines coming together and making sense for the communities. I think that really went very well, because we, from the supply chain experts or the operations expert or the NGOs with whom we were also working with Ramajanelu there. We were thinking about the storages, cold storages we would need here and there, and therefore strengthen the cold chain. But actually what the farmers needed was something really cost effective, low cost, handy, to be they should be able to carry as well. So then we surveyed a lot of materials being used across the different ways the food are being stored, transported, sold. We normally sell food in many of the countries in a wooden cart, but decorated with nice plastic sheets, which again absorb a lot of heat. So again, Brian came up with an idea of how to make reflective sheet that would not absorb the heat, but reflect the heat. So that was quite interesting. I think that really went very well. What did not go well, since I'm standing here, I'll just finish it off. Was that we went very smoothly up until the proof of concept stage, but then of course the funding get exhausted. And then the most interesting part, when we were wanting to come up to, we realized that the COVID has hit. Now the challenge of not working with the community has come in, and therefore the funding has also saturated. So I think that part didn't go well, but some of the things are not within our hands. So I think we are still pursuing to see if we can get a follow-up funding for extending that proof of concept. So sorry, I've just run this through very quickly.
Yeah, you just remind me, Sonal, that I've actually spoke to the European Space Agency about this, and I forgot to tell you. But the problem with it was that it's such a multidisciplinary subject. It's not taking a widget from space and doing something. It's taking Brian and his genius and his capabilities and his understanding materials, which is space, but it's not a widget. And that's where the difficulty of like Tom was saying about finding the secondary funding. Same problem we had there. We need to think about this. Sorry, I'm ranting. Jens, take us around through what went well and what didn't go so well. A few things.
So I'd go back to optimizing, whether it's a circular economy or supply chain, or a circular economy is kind of like a supply chain that just loops back on itself. And that optimization was something that came out in several projects, so which I thought was a good thing. So identifying things that, as we heard in the previous panel discussion, if you can find something that can work across different areas, across different disciplines, then that's a good thing. What didn't go so well maybe was that we never really got around to solving it. Let's see what Rahid has come up with, but it would be nice to, maybe there's a solution out there that we haven't seen. I'd be surprised if there wasn't something, but it sort of feels to be like, yes, let's just take some smart people, lock them in a room for a day with lots of copy, and not let them out until they've solved it.
Get what you wish for. Get Sorry, Debbie, please.
So
What went so well? What didn't go so well?
So in terms of what went so well, it was great to be able to work with the partner organization and researchers. We did a lot of engagement within the communities, especially within Sheffield. I think the partner or the lead, the PI, Xiang, was able to host events within marketplaces, talking about the issue around food waste and getting people to sign up to the platform and provide data. So I think with all that data we gathered, we saw the pattern and what it looks like for people, and where there are opportunities for improvement. And I think what we've done now is to take all that learning and then incorporate it on the food tracker platform, which means that more people can benefit from that, which I think is a very positive thing. I think the more data we capture from there will also help in engaging with local farmers as well as also local retail organizations. So in terms of what didn't go well, I think it's just, especially with regards to engaging with the community and people, can be quite challenging, getting people to consistently provide their data for this kind of analysis. So, but with nudging and continuing to engage with them, at some point you get some of the results that you seek for. But ultimately, having any project is easier to develop machines and make it work and do analysis in the lab. But when you have to engage with people and talk to them and try to get data from them, I think it can be quite complicated. So yeah, that's something that we found a bit challenging. But over time, with consistency and engagement, we ended up being able to capture some data. The PI, we actually have a publication, a paper, a journal paper, and also a conference paper. So the conference will be taking place in Hawaii in the USA. So the PI Xiang will be traveling to the US to present the outcome of the research in January, which is a great thing. And also we are working on the book that Sonal mentioned. So hopefully some of the report will come out in the book too. So yeah, it's been positive.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think you should go straight on to tell us, if you went back in time, what would you change? Just something simple.
Yeah, if I went back in time, I think because it was a bigger project, we wanted to, in the first stage, engage a lot of the retailers as part of the project. So we had contact with Waitrose, with Tesco, but that was a bit challenging. So I think it's to manage expectations better. That's what I'll do, especially with this project, manage expectations better, yeah. Just in terms of also community engagement, just plan for more time to be able to raise awareness and engage with the communities. Yeah.
This is going to be, I'm expecting a very complex answer again. Let's go back in time and change a few things. I mean, Back to the Future.
Yeah. Well, maybe in this respect, not so much. I thought I could change. I would have liked to have been able to go myself. I never found the time to go anywhere out into Indian markets or Thailand or whatever, because my diary is even worse now so I never got to see for myself what things look like. The best I got was to get here to New York and look at the circular economy, and we sat down and looked at how it actually worked with the vertical farms and stuff, and that was really good. And sometimes you need that perspective, like Ifey's practical perspective, getting data from also the panels
machine.
that they could make out of the waste products from the breweries and stuff. Maybe a trip to the breweries would have been nice as well.
You're exactly right. You've got to go out and smell the data. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you for that, both of you. So we're going to go to the Q&A session. So are there any questions online? Not on the line. Online people, please ask more questions. Any questions for the floor? There we go.
So from a purely consumer perspective, I was wondering what would be the incentives for large supermarket stores to reduce food waste if they just don't stock enough over sensitive products like vegetables and fruits? Because it happened to me a lot to go to a supermarket and I couldn't find what I needed. So they reduced the food waste this way. What would be your argument for them to find another way to reduce food waste instead of just lowering down the stock?
Great point, Melina. So I think this is where I go back to my comment before about people just having a general planning of what they need to eat, because that information is definitely going to make a huge impact across the food system. they're using the counter data now, which has to do with what you have purchased in the past 6 months. They'll use that to extrapolate and say, okay, likely someone is going to buy this. And then you know that you don't always go to Morrison. You might go to Morrison and go to Tesco and go to Coop. So all of them are using the same data, and all of them are trying to plan based on that data. So it's challenging because you don't know where you're going to buy and where it's going to come from. So at the end of the day, is that they're overstocking or they're understocking, because they're just trying to balance their books, because each time they waste food too is also a cost to them in terms of their bottom line. So it's a very difficult situation we are in. What we can do is to plan. If we plan better, then we can get a better output. In the worst case scenario, there will always be food waste within the food system. What do we do with it is really important. We don't need to throw it in landfill. We just need to recover it and be able to reuse it again. So where it happens, how do we go about dealing with it? Hopefully I answered your question.
No, that's absolutely fine. But if I don't find what I need, then I won't buy it. So there's gonna be no data, me buying the product, right? So they won't know that but I needed the product, but I didn't buy it. So they have no data on my needs if I couldn't buy it.
That's a very good point. Yeah, so
So
a way to capture that data so they can plan better. So yeah, definitely, you're very right. If there's a way, and this is something that through planning, we can see that, so that even when you go to buy something and you don't have it, that means there's a way to record it, but at the moment, there's no way to capture it. So it's something, it's kind of a feedback on what to do.
Maybe the planning, the shopping list that they have on their online apps would help a little bit, but not actually me going into the store
And not finding what you want.
Not finding those.
Yeah.
So
cool.
have the information there.
Yeah.
Maybe your change detection as well. There is
Yeah, exactly. A way to capture that data.
players. There are. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good point. Yeah.
With the circular economy model we had here, one of the examples we had was the vertical farms growing basil for pizzas for next door. And that was done on a demand-driven basis rather than a supply-driven basis. So the restaurant said, oh, we need this much basil by whatever number of weeks. It took 3 weeks or something. And then the vertical farm could plan for that by just growing enough to meet the demand. And the spreadsheet I set up as a model for this did exactly what supermarkets would do. It took the older produce and put that on the front shelf, so to speak, like, you know, when you pick up milk and you find the older, the fresh ones get put in the back, so the customers will take the older ones, right? And even in that model, most of the scenarios did not meet all the demand. So as you say, there are demands that are not being met, and you wouldn't normally know about this when people go into supermarkets, unless you have something. So with some of the Kenyan markets, for example, we looked at whether customers could register in advance their demands, particularly when they had something extraordinary, like a big feast or something coming up. And then the farmers could plan ahead and try to meet those demands. But it was mostly like a sort of theoretical back of envelope exercise at that stage.
Just to say quickly that one of the key things we're trying to work on is the Food Security Fund, and what that will do is to really help to support sustainable local producers, and that will very much tie into this aspect of helping people think about what they're trying to buy or what they want to eat, and then hopefully supporting farmers to produce that. So with that, some of these challenges may be reduced. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we're out of time. I've been given the nod. Is it one more? One more. See?
And then we have a 15-minute break.
Yeah, we have a 15-minute. You're eating into people's coffee time.
So considering the issue of cold chain in the food supply chain, in addition to the global warming, I'm wondering if we have the data from the food waste and the trade-off between food waste and the magnitude of the how to say, cold chain system that is being incorporated or being employed in the not developed economies such as African countries to save the food and avoid the food waste along the supply chain. My question is, do we have enough data, some data on that to address these issues in further studies or not?
Well, good question. I have someone who was doing a presentation in Nigeria today, and she contacted me to say, what is the food waste management data in Nigeria for the location where she is? And I searched online, and there wasn't actually much data for that particular location. And I just said to her, sorry, I can't get any data online, but there's a neighboring state which has got a data. So you can just use that to illustrate, okay, if this state, which is Lagos State, that's the biggest state, biggest city. So they have data, but so she can use it to then lay emphasis on, say, if it's happening like this and this size of location, this is what could be happening. So I think the challenge is that the data there, especially for the developing countries, are not that much. Even for the developed countries, you pay a lot of money, and this is what I've been trying to get in touch with Zero Waste Scotland and RAP and DEFRA to look into. You have to spend a huge amount of money, especially when it comes to households, to do research, because you have to pay people to be able to provide information. And this is where the food tracker comes in. Is a tool that people can use and benefit from, and that data insight can be readily available for policymakers to make interventions where it is necessary. So yes, there's need for data. We don't have comprehensive. Most of the time, if you look at FAO data, it might be telling you this 2024, telling you data for 2022. So you don't have real-time data, and that's because there's a lot of cost to be able to procure this data. And this is where we are trying to make interventions, especially for households. For businesses, it's a lot easier because businesses are paying for their waste to be taken off, and most of the waste management companies are mandated to keep record of the amount of waste they're picking, and also they're delivering to landfill, and the landfill has to measure it before they can pay for the waste. So there's kind of a bit of measurement there for businesses. But when it comes to household, it's just very difficult. So that data, to capture it, researchers have to be paid to go out to the homes and engage people and encourage people to provide the data, which can cost a lot of money. But if tools like the food tracker is being adopted, it gives benefit to the households. That data can also be very useful for making interventions where it's necessary. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would give one little tip to both of you. I don't think he's online. Is he? Stephen Sargent, is he on today? Well, okay, Stephen Sargent, the person to speak, Stephen Sargent, Open University? Yeah. Open University, look at sparse data. He's an astronomer. Look at sparse data. I think you know what that is.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that. Folks, can we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you very much.